Tēnā koutou katoa, everyone. So my name's Tim Young. I'm going to talk today about why accessibility is important, a few ways we can improve accessibility, challenges we face to improve accessibility, and how to build awareness around why we should be changing, improving web accessibility. My background is in educational technology and psychology, and as mentioned, I'm now running for Hamilton City Council with policies to prepare the city for disruptive technologies and improve accessibility for all of the residents, and also to prepare for the increasing aging population. I like to frame the need to improve web accessibility around the aging population because that's the market that's growing at the moment. There's a significant proportion that are born with disabilities, or like me, go snowboarding overseas and a bit too reckless and break their neck. But generally, there's a lot of aging people. So currently, 59% of those over 65 are disabled, and that proportion, that segment of the population is growing from 15% currently to 30% in the next 3 decades. So improving web accessibility is going to be a good business decision long term because of that. So personally, I've relied on assistive technology since I broke my neck 10 years ago. So I have personally used voice recognition software. I use trackball mouse, which is a big ball that I guide with my wrist. I use sticky keys, which are kind of keyboard shortcuts, and a mouse, which doesn't move around much. I really needed that. I did 4 years of postgraduate studies in psychology. I developed my game online. I learned how to develop the game from YouTube tutorials only. I had to use Squarespace to develop my own websites, and I used online things like Fiverr or other such recruitment tools to hire developers and composers and things, which is all really important. So if it wasn't for assistive technologies and web accessibility, there's no way I would have achieved all this. And it would be difficult to show people I'm up to the task and to get experience in these fields. But also, now I'm in a position where I can ask people for funding. And, these are all levels of the hierarchy that you need to overcome to get above there as a disabled person. So technology, obviously, with the internet and personal computers, they're transforming the world, the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we shop. And these empowering technologies have had a far greater impact on disabled people, because before we would be confined to a room or a house, we can now have the world at our fingertips. So it's super important. So by not providing web accessibility and not including a large segment of the population in this revolution would be very uncool, but it would be also a breach of human rights under the UN Convention of the Rights for Persons with Disabilities. And it's excluding a significant proportion of the population being able to engage in the in the economy, obviously, and also potentially in your business. So it's bad for disabled people and it's bad for business. And we need to consider, obviously, where technology is going with the huge advances in automation, AI, that all the people who have access to these technologies are obviously going to be far more powerful than those without. So going forward, it's really important to improve disabled people with these technologies, otherwise inequality is going to grow. And you get stuck in a negative feedback loop, self-perpetuating with the economic system and scarcity mindsets. Once you're behind, it's really hard to get back on top. And considering the overrepresentation of disabled people in statistics around poverty, mental well-being, and social mobility, it's really important to include all people in these computing advances. So the main challenge in improving web accessibility is awareness. Most businesses don't want to exclude part of their market. They want to have the maximum profit they can, but many just aren't aware of the opportunity that disabled people provide. It's 24% of the population, Statistics New Zealand stats. So yeah, it's really it's a huge part of the population. Obviously, there's a cost component. So knowing what percentage of a market a business may gain upon if they make things accessible would be a huge, great tool, and most businesses would probably decide that the investment's worth it. But a huge problem we have is that there's a lack of data about where disabled people do shop, where they don't shop, and why they don't shop where they don't shop. So it's really hard for businesses to make well-reasoned and good decisions based on data. At the moment, companies generally rely on general knowledge, maybe some anecdotal evidence, and if you're really lucky, a bit of extra research into what needs of disabled people are. But there are no current compulsory regulations like there are with the building code to include disabled people in businesses. There's the web content, I can't remember these guidelines, web content accessibility guidelines, but they aren't compulsory. And if we have the same reasons about why people should be allowed in buildings, then we should probably have similar reasons as why we're allowed, everyone should be included online, considering how fast everything's growing. Currently, about 15% of business sales are online, but with improvements in AI, improving the shopping experience, and drone deliveries, and automated vehicles, which will reduce the cost of deliveries, these things are going to continue to increase. So, yeah, it's really important to include them. Oh, whoops. So, to be web accessible, the websites need to meet 4 criteria. They need to be perceivable, which means they need to be seen and / or heard. They need to be operable, so you can operate them with keyboard, mouse, or voice recognition software, screen readers, that sort of stuff. They need to be understandable with simple and clear and concise language, and they need to be robust, so you can use them with multiple assistive technologies. So a few examples, you can make your website more accessible by making it so you can navigate entirely with the keyboard, so voice recognition software and people who can't use a mouse can use that. You can make sure there's a high color contrast between pictures, buttons, and graphics. And you can also make a simple and straightforward user interface and experience that better fits those with low vision and attention difficulties. And after you've made any changes, it's really important to do testing around with a range of devices, touchscreen, all those different devices, and also different assistive technologies. And obviously there's some opportunities to increase your market if you do these things, but also there's quite a lot of unintended positive consequences by doing this. You know, if you add captions to your videos, then you're making it easier to watch in quiet or loud places for the able-bodied population. If you have good color contrast on buttons, it means it's less prone to glare, or if you're in a rush, you know, it's useful for that as well. And everyone has a better user experience with improved and easy to use format. So there's very few assistive technologies that you have to weigh up against why it's going to make your product worse or something. So yeah, it's almost always good. Also, those with age-related impairments who might not yet be disabled, these are my bunny ears, disabled, then also temporary disabilities. You know, we all have temporary disabilities throughout as well. So huge potential to increase there. And as a small business owner with limited resources, I understand the need to prioritize costs and your potential target market. Sometimes you want something to be bright and flashy to gain attention, but that wouldn't be good for epileptic people. So there's always things to weigh up, but generally it's almost always going to be better, and it's good to keep in mind that you don't have to rebuild your website from the ground up. There's lots of ways to retrofit accessibility features as well. So you can start with those, areas that will catch more people, and then get down to more specific if you need to. So to have the biggest impact you can on web accessibility, we need to build awareness around opportunity, cost, and ways to improve web accessibility, not only within your company, but with other colleagues in different companies. It's really important to build awareness because we need more than one voice to make these things happen. If you go back to your organisation and you're the only one that thinks this is important, it's not going to happen. So it's really, really, I'd say that's my takeaway message, is to really try and spread these things and show why it is good for everyone. Also, how you deliver the message is really important. From a psychology perspective, if you guilt trip people and you try and be like an aggressive social justice warrior, it's almost never going to work. If you want someone to convince someone of your point of view and they don't already agree with you, you need to be respectful, kind, and informed, lots of facts, be patient, and you're going to have the best results that way. No one likes an asshole. And when you're trying to persuade someone, try and frame things in a way that's most appealing to them. If they're economically minded, try and do that. If they're humanitarian, that's pretty easy already if anyone is a humanitarian here. Also how it improves the user experience and user interface for everyone. Or also, even if you want to, play the card of how it's going to improve your company's image, and so you can advertise that way and be different from your competitors and more socially minded, then that's fairly popular these days. So as a Hamilton City Council candidate, education has been a huge part of my campaign. I know that I need 7 people on board to make any decision. So already I've reached out to all other council candidates, and I've been pushing all my ideas with web accessibility and accessibility in general, and trying to start positive relationships with all these people, because that's just going to be so key if I get on, when I get on. This way, I can already have an impact on policy without even being in council, and even if I don't get in, I can maintain these messages with these people. If I am elected to council, I'll make sure we have a AAA rating, which will be on par with Attitude's and own ambitions. And another thing you can do to improve web accessibility is consider voting for people who may be familiar with accessibility, technology, or accessibility and technology like myself. So let's all spread the word about accessibility, and so we can all be part of the online revolution. Thank you.